Hi everyone, welcome to the highlighting portion of our color segments, making color moves. So what I want to share with you today is a highlighting technique that you can use in the salon. It's a very foundational technique that allows it to grow out very easily, very soft lines toward the scalp. One of the most important things I think when people are having their color done is that it grows out really softly, unless they're asking for specific techniques that create very hard or chunky lines. But what we're going to talk about today is a technique that hits the trends that we're seeing right now, a lot more lightness around the front, a lot more blend toward the back, and grows out very softly. So we'll be working with the shape of the head and the planes of the head to create this look. So the first thing I'm going to do is to put together a roadmap of where I'm going to be working. It's really important to know what I'm doing in the areas that I'm working. So I'm going to separate the hair in half first, in the back section and in the front section, and I use the high point of the head just to behind the ear to create that sectioning. So I'm going to take a clip and clip the back of the head, and then I'm going to work into the front here. I'm going to section out just along the hairline so that I know where I'm going to create a bit more brightness in the highlight. Grab my clip and move this out of the way just so I can check my hairline. And it's, what we're looking for is density here. It's not so much about an inch and a half an inch, but how much hair can I see through? How much lightness do I want around the face? So I want it to have enough hair that I can't fully see my hand through it, but that we're not so thick that we're creating a headband type look across the front of the hairline. So on this mannequin head, she's got about medium hair texture, medium density. I'm working with approximately a half an inch of hair along the hairline. So I'm just going to take a look here. Make sure that I'm on with that. Following the hairline. Nobody's hairline is a perfect arc, so we want to make sure that we can look and see that we have, in fact, the same amount of hair across the front of the hairline as well as down the side. And so that looks even to me. Put a couple clips there. And then I'm going to section right at that parietal or side section and top. So I have a top and I have the rest of my side, which is quite small after you take that front section. Again, depending upon the head, it can change. So I'm working on the side of the head that I did the teasy lights on yesterday. So we can take a look here and see what the result of that was. You can see there are some pieces that come a little bit closer, a lot more lightness toward the bottom. And when we see those highlighted looks where we have kind of full blonde toward the bottom, this is an idea that you can use in the salon of combining both a traditional highlighting technique, adjusting different weave patterns, and including teasy light highlights maybe in between those foils to give it a more full blonde look. So I'm going to create this section again, the side section, and then we're going to start in the front. I like to start in the front in the salon because I really want to make sure that these highlights are going to get light enough, and I can always pull these foils out and remove the lightener from them and let them finish processing in air to slow down that process. In the front, I'm going to take two sections that are going to be parallel to the hairline and back to back. So we'll take this first section and see transparency is pretty good. I can see my hand through it. Okay, so first section, I'm going to go ahead in and weave with a smaller weave closer to what we might consider a baby light. Notice I have taken my weave about halfway down the hair strand. I am remembering the density of my client's hair. It changes density about halfway down, so I don't want to go into the end or I'll be missing hair that is closer to the scalp. And if I go too close to the scalp, I start to lose a little bit of my control and it doesn't quite come out as nice. So I'm going to go right to the end of the density in my client's, the most density in my client's hair, and take my weave. And since I'm using the whole section, I can separate here. And I have two choices. I can either choose to highlight this part of the weave that's close to my client's scalp, or I can choose to highlight the part that's beyond. And I am going to choose to highlight the portion of the hair that is not next to the skin here in the front or the hairline, so that there's a soft veil of hair that covers over it. This is going to help the outgrowth. It's going to soften the line that's present with the color next to the hairline in the front. It all depends upon the preference of your client. I like to use a highlighting board because it's a great surface to work with. I can place that board right underneath my section, and I'm going to apply my lightener by stamping it about 2 inches down from the outgrowth and rolling that lightener across for good saturation, taking my next application and bringing it a little bit closer, and then tilting my brush vertically to work that lightener a bit closer to the scalp without creating a hard horizontal line with my brush. So I'm continuing on adding my lightener down the hair strand, making sure that I'm tilting my brush vertically toward the top, rolling that hair back and forth. And since I'm working on a section that I have already done some highlighting on, I'm going to be sensitive on how far down I take this lightener. These ends are already blonde, so I'm just going to move them out of the way so that I don't re-highlight them. And I'm going to trifold to lock the foil into place. I'm going to go underneath, catch that little flap to secure my foil, and then fold on either side. I am not pressing my foil tight or creasing it, so I don't want to push the lightener away from the hair that's within the foil. So I'm going to go back in and do my next weave. Now, because I'm working from this predominantly from the scalp to about right here where the density is, I'm going to weave in that section so that I can catch the hair within the section that I'm working. I don't want to go down too far, and I don't want to go too close because I'm working with the hair predominantly here. So that's where I'm going to weave. I'm going to grab my board and grab my foil. And we're going to place our foil right next to the scalp. I had a couple of hairs that were kind of funky there, so I'm just going to smooth that out better for my application. And I'm going to take my lightener and stamp it about 2 inches, 1.5 to 2 inches down from the scalp. Roll that lightener back and forth for good saturation. Go back in, tilt my brush to vertical, and then work that lightener up toward the scalp. Roll it back and forth and a little bit further. I'm trying not to create a load of lightener saturation at the edge of the foil. This is where we get bleeding. Too much lightener here can expand and then bleed out of your foil and end up on the scalp. We don't want that. So I'm going to continue my lightener application and roll that lightener as I work down the shaft of the hair. These little pieces at the end, I'm going to catch this time because they're not very light. And I'm just going to double check my hair that's close to the edge of the foil. Give it a roll. And then I'm going to trifold again. So we're going to do one fold about 1/3 of the way down, and then another fold to catch the top of the foil. I am a huge fan of using this flap to reposition my foil and make sure that no lightener slips out. So those are my 2 foils in the front, and I'm going to move right to the side, flip these guys up, and then work in this side section. Why am I working this whole hairline first? Because I want it processing at the same time. I want to make sure that when these are done, that these are done as well. That way I can remove those if I need to before the rest of the highlight is complete. I'm going to move this section out of my way, and we'll go ahead and take our first section, just about 1/2 of that, since we're going to create a back-to-back highlight here. Clip that hair out of the way, and then we're going to highlight this section. So, thing to keep in mind, my highlights on the top part of the hairline here, I took at the edge of my section. So if I pick up this one, I'm going to have 2 pieces that I've woven right next to each other, which is going to create one large foiled highlight. And when this is done, she's going to have a very big piece right here in her hairline. And I kind of want to avoid that because wherever we create lightness in the hair, our eye is drawn. So I just want you to envision this for a moment. If we have a large highlighted piece on both of the recessions of the hairline, the eye is going to go right to that when my client pulls her hair back, and I don't want that to be the predominant place that we're looking at on my client's hair. So I'm going to skip that first section, go back down to where my density is, and then pick up the weave just beyond that. If you have little hairs that are stragglers, just comb them down. Remember, the size of your weave is going to dictate what that looks like when your client pulls her hair back, so I'm not making it too large. You can see there is a bit of variety and then smaller hairs within that. It's going to look a little bit more blended this way. I'm going to take my lightener, stamp it about 2 inches to 1/2 inch down, roll it, and then grab some more lightener and bring that toward the top of the foil. Roll it again and continue to work that close. This is going to keep this edge soft where the highlight starts, so we don't have any strong lines next to the scalp. All of these precautions that we're taking are designed for a nice, soft grow out. Nothing more valuable than a long-lasting color surface. I'm going to leave those ends because they are already light. And we're going to do our tri-fold here. And I'm going to take my comb and go ahead in and adjust that flap. I lock the bottom first so that it holds the foil up, and then lock the top. Now she's stable. I'm going to grab my second section behind. And again, I'm paying attention here so I don't pick up this section right next to the top. I'm going to go right below that and pick up, look for my density down here. And you can see where that previous highlighting was from that teasy light. So I'm going to go in and pick up the pieces that are not light. This way, I'm not highlighting over top of areas that are already light. We don't need to double process hair whenever possible. We can avoid that. Stamp that lightener, roll it, continue bringing it closer to the scalp with a vertical section, roll it again, and bring that lightener down. We'll give it one more icing. Again, I'm going to go in with that little flap behind and then lock it from the bottom to support the foil, and then lock it from the top. Okay, since we're already in the side section, I'm going to continue on the side, and then we'll move into the top. The rest of the side section is going to be diagonal back. So I'm going to take my first section right behind my hairline, and if you notice, it's not parallel to the hairline anymore. It's now diagonal back, so I'm going to be working up from the corner of the section here to the corner of the top of the side section. And that way we won't have any missing places, we won't have any pockets of depth that we don't want. It'll be a nice blend, and the color will be moving back away from the face. I'm going to go ahead and take my first weave. Again, remember, if I take this first section, it's going to be right next to the section I just wove, and we're going to have a large block of color there. So I'm going to skip that first one and move into just behind it. Where is my density? Down here. I'm going to go ahead and weave there. Take my first foil. And then I'm going to apply the lightener exactly how I've been applying it, lock my foils, and I'm going to move diagonally right up to the top of that section. I'm going to start slicing off the top of the section here and working with this so that I can leave enough depth underneath there so we have some dimension. Remember that if we don't have anything dark to lay our light on top of, we lose our dimension. We're just going to have an all over blonde look. And I do want to leave some dimension, so I'm going to leave a little bit of hair here so that I have lightness to lay on top. That's something you can use to your discretion in the salon based upon how much dimension you want left in the hair. If you're looking for a more overall blonde look, you can do back-to-back foiling. If you're looking for something that's a little bit more light in dimension and has a little bit more depth to it, you can leave more space behind your light pieces. So leaving more hair out that's not colored will create a higher contrast. Now there's no foils next to my section, so I can feel free to skim the top of that section and then work right at the edge of my highlight. Go back down to my density. There we go. Okay, I'm going to move on to my top section. So there's a couple things we can do here. We can either just work right at the corner and go diagonally forward, or we can take a bit of our back section and create a section that we can mimic our foils with. And so since we're moving now into a diagonal forward section, I'm going to resection this so that I have a guideline for a diagonal forward movement. And I'm going to take my first section right at the top, and we can see this is now moving diagonal forward. So when it's pushed back, you're going to have a nice panel of color, and it's going to fall a little bit softer. The outgrowth area will be a little bit softer that way as well. As I get toward the front and I begin running into my previous foils, I'm again going to be aware of where I'm picking up my first weave. Am I picking it up next to my foil, which is going to again give me a large ribbon of color, or am I going to stay just beyond? So I'm going to pick up just beyond that so I don't create that extra large ribbon of color. Okay, so I'm coming to my last section right now. That's right on the hairline. So I have to make a decision. Do I want a strong, bold piece of color right on the hairline? If so, I can take a slice right on the hairline and weave that slice, and my color will be right smack on the hairline. That's going to be very visible, and if that's what you want, great. If you want this to be a little bit softer, take that small veil of hair on the hairline and move that out of the way, and then take your section below it and weave that section. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. This looks incredibly small, totally understand that, but every piece that you do not color on your blonde client, you will see as a missing highlight. So be very careful, whatever little pieces are left behind, that you do something with them or intentionally leave them out. So I'm being very careful right here because this is exactly what my client's going to see when she's standing in the mirror in her bathroom and the light shining on top of her head. Okay, that completes the top and the side. So we're going to work up the nape and the back of the head now. So my foil's on top. I can move. I've tri-folded them. They're locked in place. I can push them out of the way. No problem. So I'm going to go ahead and move them forward and just give it a clip to hold them in place here. I'm going to clip from the side so I don't press that light out of the way. And we're going to work in the back. Again, we're working on one side of the mannequin head right now so that you can mimic this on the other side, opposite. But the reason why we want to use this one mannequin head for you, so if you want to do this at home, you can practice again all of these techniques on one mannequin head and see a complete look without having to purchase multiple mannequin heads to do this. So in the nape, I'm going to do 2 foils along the hairline, one in the very bottom, and then one along the side. And I'm doing that exactly the same as I did in the front, because when my client brings all her hair up, I want that to be a very soft blend of color so that it doesn't look like there's stripes. If you want stripes, change your direction. If you want ribbons, change the direction of your foil so that it runs perpendicular to your hairline. If I were doing this full nape, I could probably put 1 foil at the bottom of the nape. If the nape is quite wide, you might need to divide it into 2. So I'm going to go ahead and look where that density is again in my hair. Again, it's about mid-strand. So I'm going to go ahead and do my weave in that section. Separate that out. If you want color right on the hairline, foil the hair on the bottom. If you want a soft veil over top of it, foil the hair behind it. I'm going for a soft veil. So we're going to foil the hair behind it. My application is going to be the same, stamping about 1.5 inches to 2 inches down, rolling that hair, and then working up toward the scalp, rolling that out again, and then bringing that lightener down. Again, most of the ends are already lightened from the teasy lights we did yesterday, so I'm staying away from lightening them again, as just to prevent damage. There's really no need to relighten hair that's already been lightened. It just creates more damage. So I'm looking again at my density about right here. I'm going to go ahead and weave this. Notice this, I'm stepping away from the light pieces as much as possible. So I'm going to take my next section just above the nape horizontally in the same fashion. And I'm going to skim the top of that section and then find the density and go ahead and weave. Now you can see that you get a full look with a teasy light, or you could get a full look with a highlight, but we're doing them separately so that you can see what that looks like. In the salon, if you wanted this full combination of highlights and teasy lights, you could do these at the same time. You'll see the result of both of them together, but we wanted to give you an example of what it would look like separately. Remember, choosing what technique you're going to use is going to be fully based upon the look that you're going for. So I'm switching my section now to diagonal, and we're going to do horizontal, diagonal, all the way up to the top of the crown here. And the reason for that is it covers a lot of space, it provides a lot of movement, it gets you through the area of the head faster versus doing a whole lot of horizontal foils or a whole lot of diagonal foils. This back and forth covers a lot of space. So I'm going to skim the top of this section here and find my density, do my weave, and separate. All of the sections that I'm taking are based upon the size of the foil. And depending upon the shape of your client's head and the size of your client's head, they're going to land at different spots. It doesn't totally matter where they land. What matters is that you're taking sections that are the size of your foil and you're using the proper direction for foiling. So if I was working on, again, this whole entire nape, this horizontal section would go all the way to the other side. But I'm only working on half of the head, so what you're going to see is half of that foil right now. This would extend all the way to the other side, and I would be placing diagonals on the other side as well. So what you have is almost like an upside down Christmas tree, basically. You have 2 diagonal foils here, 1 horizontal here, and you keep doing that up the head. So what happens is you have just enough space to work with the right amount of space of foil, and you're covering the whole back of the head very quickly versus going in a train track section all the way up to the top. Again, I'm paying attention to what I'm foiling next to. If I pick up this section that's next to my foil, I'm going to have a bold strip of color there. I know I continue to repeat this, but it's very important to know because if we're not intentional with where we're putting our color, we have unintentional results, and then we have another process to work with afterwards. So I don't want those bold pieces. I'm selecting a strand behind that. So I'm not foiling my horizontal section directly against the diagonal section next to it. If you notice too, sometimes I go back and recharge my brush with lightener, sometimes I don't. It all depends upon how much lightener I have on my brush. If I don't need to grab more lightener, I'm not going to, but I want to make sure that I have enough on my brush to saturate the section completely. Next diagonal. You see by placing that horizontal foil, I've shrunk the section that I can work with in my diagonal so they're always fitting the right size with my foil. I'm going to skim that top section, find where the density is. If you notice too, there's a variety of sizes within here. There's some more traditional type size weaves, there's some baby lights, there's some smaller pieces, there's some thicker pieces. This tends to create a more natural appearance. When everything is quite structured, it becomes a little bit more visually the same. So if you can mix it up a little bit, it provides a bit more of a natural appearance afterwards. So if you noticed, I started in the front of the mannequin head. I tend to do that in the salon because that is the most visible area, right? So I want to make sure that whatever I do, that is on point. I can remove those foils when they're light enough, but if they don't get light enough, there's going to be a problem. So I like to work in the front, make sure that that process is exactly the way I want it to, and then remove it as I go. The foils in the back, because they're sitting underneath other foils, are going to have an element of heat added to them. So they're going to get warmer because of the heat from the scalp, and they're going to lighten quicker. For myself, I find that it's a little bit more controllable if I work in the front and then work toward the back, changing my developers as I go, starting with something a little bit less powerful in the front, working up to something a little bit more powerful in the back, meaning that I'm upping my developer as I work, and I can essentially take most of the foils out at the same time and have them being processed exactly where they need them to be without having to add the addition of heat or potentially reapply my lightener to some of the foil packets. It doesn't matter. That's not the only way to do it. It's just the way that works well for me in the salon to be efficient and effective. I prefer to have my foils come up at the same time. You can also start in the back with a low developer and work into a high developer in the front, but please be aware that you have to go back and to check your foils in the back as they do become lighter quicker. Yeah, and once again, you'll see this weave here is a little bit different than the weave before it. And again, I find in the salon that if I mix them up a bit, I have a nice variety of color dimension when I'm done. I think my favorite visual of that is the little girl running on the beach with all different sizes of highlights in her hair from the sun. It's really the most natural, one of the most beautiful looks that we can recreate, and that has a variety of dimension happening in it. So again, if we're trying to create something that has a realistic look to it, grows out easily, looks natural, keep these techniques in mind in the way to position the foils and the way that we choose our weave. So I'm getting down to my last little area of hair here, taking my skim off the section. Notice that I'm working against two foils, so I'm going to leave out the two corners and do my weave in between. Where's the density here? It's absolutely as important to be aware of what you're leaving out as it is to be aware of what you're coloring. And you can see there's some larger pieces, some smaller pieces again. So if we want to talk about how we're going to address this when your client comes back in and it's grown out. One of the benefits of working in these diagonal patterns and shifting the type of weaves that you're using throughout the head is that we're not trying to go back in and pick up the exact hair that we colored last time. Some people are quite good at that. I am not. I find that it's much more effective and much easier to go in and change some of my patterns, change some of my angles, and then retouch only the parts that are dark and leave the parts that are light out. It creates a variety in color as the hair grows out, and it consistently stays a bit more natural looking. I mean, it's not very often that we have a client come in with virgin hair anymore, so there's always something going on within the hair. And if you can keep a lot of different movement happening within your highlight application, it's just going to consistently over time look better as you consistently retouch it and not go over the hair that's already been lightened. The number one thing in the salon I think we can all agree on is that if we can't keep the hair in good condition, it's hard to keep it looking good. So what can I do to create something that I can consistently keep up and my client's hair still stays in good condition? This is one of the ways to do it. All right, last foil. Again, this is half head, right? So this would be extended a bit more if I was working on the full head. So it's a teeny tiny foil, but I'm addressing it exactly the same as I would a full foil, leaving out that first section and then weaving into the center. Okay, and complete. You can see we have coverage that follows the hairline, so when the hair gets brought up, we don't see ribbons, we see soft panels. We have different movements inside, so when the hair is moved back, it's soft. When the hair is moved up, it's soft. It's got a lot of different movement, so when it grows out, you're not going to see any strong staggered lines. And we're showing you specifically this technique or this way of foiling. This is a very solid general way to do a natural set of highlights in the salon. Most of the time, this is what we're doing. It's a great foundation, and you can switch it up however you need to create chunkier, finer, or more bold pieces.